Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Kyle always thought he knew his wife better than anyone else in the world. 10 years of marriage, 2 little girls, countless nights talking about dreams and plans while dinner got cold on the table. Jenna was his partner, his best friend, the woman he'd chosen to build a whole life with. They'd met at a mutual friend's party, and Kyle still remembered the blue dress she'd worn, the way she laughed, tossing her head back with no care in the world. She seemed real, authentic in a way he rarely found in people. They built their life together carefully, with planning. Buying their first house was celebrated with cheap champagne and pizza on the bare living room floor, talking out loud about what it would be like when their kids ran through the rooms. Emma came 2 years later, turning them into parents for the first time. Kyle would never forget the feeling of holding that tiny child, the weight of responsibility settling in alongside a love he hadn't known was possible. 3 years after that, Lily arrived, completing the family they'd planned. Routines became traditions. Pancakes on Sundays. Movie nights on Fridays. Late-night talks about bills, about the girls, about small wins at work. It was a good life, solid, built to last. But in the last 3 months, something had changed. It wasn't a dramatic explosion that shattered everything all at once. It was subtle, gradual, like a thin crack appearing in a wall you only notice when the afternoon sun hits it at just the right angle. Kyle tried to ignore the first signs, telling himself he was being paranoid, that stress was messing with his perception. But the feeling stuck around, growing slowly, impossible to fully brush off. It started with Jenna asking for some time alone. It was a Tuesday morning. She was scrambling eggs for the girls before school when she dropped the line casually. "Kyle, I need some time for myself. To rediscover who I am, you know?" He'd looked at her over his coffee cup, confused. Rediscover what? They had a good life. The girls were healthy, the house was almost paid off, they had friends in the neighborhood. What was missing? But Jenna insisted with a distant look he didn't recognize, her eyes fixed on something beyond that kitchen. And Kyle, always wanting to be understanding, agreed. Maybe she was just tired. Caring for 2 little kids was exhausting. He could give her that space without a problem. The weeks that followed brought changes that piled up. Jenna started going out at night more and more. Twice a week became 3, then 4. "I'm just going for a walk, need to clear my head," she'd say, grabbing her keys with a hurry that hadn't been there before. Or, "I'm meeting Sarah, she's going through some stuff," mentioning a college friend Kyle could barely remember having seen in the last 5 years. When Kyle casually asked how Sarah was doing, Jenna gave a vague answer and quickly changed the subject. Kyle stayed home with Emma and Lily. He gave them baths, a task that got harder when he did it alone. Emma was 7 and growing more independent, but Lily, at 5, still needed help with everything. He read bedtime stories, doing different voices for the characters while the girls snuggled against him. He made late-night snacks when one of them woke up thirsty. He tried not to think too much about Jenna's absences, but something gnawed at him. One night, while Kyle was brushing Emma's hair after her bath, she asked, "Dad, why is Mom going out so much?" The question came with that childlike innocence that cut straight to the heart. Kyle didn't know what to say except, "Sometimes adults need time to think about things, sweetheart. It doesn't mean she doesn't love you." But the question echoed in his mind for hours. What really started to bother him was Brett. The neighbor next door had always been practically invisible. Divorced, 42, worked from home doing something tech-related. They shared a low fence between their yards, but in 5 years as neighbors, Kyle couldn't remember ever having a real conversation with him. Brett was polite when picking up mail, waved when washing his car, but kept his distance. Kyle was fine with that. But about a month ago, Brett had changed completely. Suddenly, he greeted Kyle with overly wide smiles and enthusiastic waves. "Hey, Kyle. How's it going?" he'd shout from the yard whenever he saw him. There was something unsettling about those smiles, a familiarity that hadn't been earned. Brett's eyes had a glint Kyle couldn't figure out, but that made him feel uneasy. One Saturday, Kyle was mowing the lawn when Brett leaned on the fence. "Must be nice having some quiet time with the girls now that Jenna's out so much, huh? Dad and daughters, that's important." The comment made Kyle stop the mower. How did Brett know Jenna was out so much? They'd never talked about it. Kyle forced a smile and muttered something about quality time with the kids being valuable, but felt something cold run down his spine. He started noticing patterns. Brett always showed up whenever Jenna was leaving the house. He'd appear at the window or in the yard, waving. And Jenna would give him a small smile before pulling away. Those moments were quick, but Kyle noticed. There was something in those exchanges that deeply unsettled him. It was on a Wednesday night that Kyle's instincts finally pushed him to act. Jenna had just left, saying she needed fresh air and would be back in a few hours. She was wearing the expensive perfume he'd given her for her birthday and a silk blouse he didn't remember ever seeing before. Small details that, on their own, meant nothing. Kyle was in the living room, trying to review a work report, when he heard Brett's front door close. The sound was loud in the quiet of the night. Something made him get up and go to the window. Brett was getting into his car, but his behavior was strange. He looked quickly left and right down the street before starting the engine, a furtive move that set off an alarm in Kyle's mind. Without thinking much, operating more on instinct than reason, Kyle grabbed his keys. He called Mrs. Martinez, the trusted neighbor 2 houses down. "I need to step out quickly. The girls are asleep, but can you stay here if they wake up?" She agreed right away, without asking questions. In 5 minutes, Kyle was in his car, following Brett's taillights at a safe distance. His heart was pounding. Part of him hoped he was being paranoid. Part of him already knew the truth. Brett drove through familiar streets. Past the girls' school, past the bakery where Kyle bought bread on Saturdays, past landmarks of a life that suddenly felt fragile. Then he got on the highway, driving calmly for about 20 minutes. Kyle kept 2 or 3 cars back, hands gripping the wheel. When Brett pulled into the parking lot of a secluded park, Kyle felt the air grow heavy. He parked far away, turning off his headlights. The park was nearly empty, just a few trees lit by weak streetlights that cast more shadows than light. Brett parked in a dark corner and shut off his car. Kyle watched, breath held, praying he was wrong. 10 minutes passed, slow and torturous. Then 15. His mind raced, inventing explanations. Maybe Brett was just taking a break. Maybe waiting for someone for a work meeting. Anything. Then he saw it. Jenna's car slowly pulling into the lot, headlights cutting through the darkness. Kyle recognized that white SUV anywhere. The one they'd bought together 3 years ago, arguing over safety features for the girls. Jenna parked exactly behind Brett's car. Precisely. Like she'd done it before. Kyle watched his wife get out of her car. She glanced around briefly, a quick sweep of the parking lot. Then she walked over to Brett's car. The passenger door opened before she even reached it. She got in. The door closed. Kyle stayed there, 50 meters away, watching. Watching the car sway slightly after a few minutes. The windows fogging up in the cold night. He couldn't move. Couldn't breathe right. It all felt unreal, like he was watching someone else's life. He didn't know how long he sat there. 15 minutes? An hour? He thought about getting out of the car, banging on the window, confronting it all right then. But something held him back. Maybe pride. Maybe the need to process it rationally before acting. He didn't need to see any more. That was enough. More than enough. Kyle started the car, hands shaking, and drove home. He didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just felt a cold emptiness settle where trust used to be. The girls were still asleep when he got back. Mrs. Martinez was knitting in the living room. Kyle thanked her, assured her everything was fine, and waited for her to leave. Then he locked himself in his office. He opened his laptop and started searching. Divorce lawyers. Custody laws in the state. Asset division. Infidelity as a factor in legal cases. He had the whole night, and he'd use every minute. Kyle wasn't a man who acted on impulse. But when he acted, he planned. And this would be the most important decision of his life. Jenna got home 2 hours later, slipping in quietly. Kyle heard her footsteps climbing the stairs, the shower turning on. She was washing off his smell. Coming back to the facade. Kyle stayed in the office, taking notes, compiling information, building a plan. When the sun rose, he already had a lawyer appointment scheduled for that morning at 9. At 7, when Jenna came downstairs to make coffee for the girls, Kyle was sitting at the table, waiting. She jumped when she saw him, but quickly pulled her expression together. "You're already up? I thought you'd sleep a little longer." "I couldn't sleep," Kyle said. His voice was calm, controlled. "I was thinking." "About what?" Jenna asked, turning her back to him, rummaging through cabinets. "About you and Brett." The sound of the cup stopping was almost comical. Jenna froze. Kyle saw the exact moment she decided to lie. She turned slowly, forcing confusion onto her face. "Brett? The neighbor? What about him?" Kyle leaned back, crossing his arms. "Jenna, I saw you last night. At the parking lot on Highway 47. I followed Brett when he left 10 minutes after you. I saw you get into his car. I sat there for 40 minutes. I saw everything I needed to see." The color drained from her face like water down a drain. For 10 seconds, she just opened and closed her mouth, searching for words. "Kyle, it's not what you think." "Not?" He let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Then explain what it is. Please. I'm genuinely eager to hear your version." "We just talked. He was helping me through some personal issues I didn't want to burden you with." "You talked inside his car?" Kyle interrupted, voice still controlled but edged with sharpness. "In an isolated parking lot? At 10 at night? With the windows fogging up?" "Jenna, for God's sake, don't insult me. Do you think I'm stupid?" His smiles, the way he greets me like he knows some joke, you asking for space 3 months ago, your increasingly frequent outings. It all makes sense now. Perfect sense. Tears started to fall. She took a step toward him, reaching out her hands. "Kyle, please, it was a mistake. A terrible one. I don't even know what came over me. I was confused, felt invisible, and he was there, paying attention. So it's my fault?" Kyle stood up, the chair scraping the floor. "You cheated on our marriage, lied to me repeatedly for months, got involved with our neighbor, and it's because you felt invisible? We have 2 sleeping daughters upstairs, Jenna. Emma and Lily. 10 years of marriage. A house we built together. Plans, dreams, a whole life. And you threw it all away for attention? It wasn't like that. I still love you, I never stopped." "You have a very creative way of showing love," Kyle said. The irony was heavy, cutting. "You know what I did all night while you slept peacefully after your shower? I looked up divorce lawyers. I read about custody laws. I learned about asset division in cases of infidelity. I already have a consultation scheduled for 2 hours from now. I've already started documenting everything, timelines, your lies, where you said you were versus where you actually were. And before you ask, yes, I'm fighting for primary custody of the girls. You might have forgotten what it means to be a wife, but I won't let you forget your responsibilities as a mother." Jenna sobbed loudly, covering her face. "You can't do this. They're my daughters too. And you should have thought of that before you got into that car." Kyle picked up his keys from the table. "I'm leaving now. When I come back, I want you here to take care of the girls while I handle the legal stuff. They'll wake up in an hour, they'll want coffee, they'll want normalcy. Can you give them that today? Then we'll talk about how and when we'll tell them we won't be living together anymore. And Jenna? Keep Brett away from this house and away from our daughters. If he shows up here, I'm calling the police." "Kyle, wait, please." But he was already out the door, not looking back. The consultation with the lawyer was clarifying. Richard Harrison, a man in his 50s with decades of experience in divorce cases, flipped through the papers Kyle brought. "With documented infidelity through your testimony and her behavior over the past few months, you have strong chances of getting primary custody. Courts always prioritize the children's best interests, and stability is key." The house was in both their names, but Kyle could keep it if Jenna agreed. Often, the unfaithful party accepts less favorable terms out of guilt or just to end it quickly, Harrison explained. Kyle left 2 hours later with a clear action plan and a folder of forms to fill out. When he got back home, it was almost noon. Jenna was in the living room, eyes red and swollen, surrounded by used tissues. The girls were at school. She stood when he walked in. "Kyle, can we talk?" "Really talk? I think we've talked enough this morning." "I'm done with him," Jenna said quickly. "I texted Brett, said it was over, that I'd destroyed my family. I blocked his number. Please, can we try couples therapy? I know an excellent therapist." Kyle let out a genuinely surprised laugh. "You really think I'd come back? Jenna, you don't get it. I'm not angry just because you slept with him. I'm broken because you lied to me systematically every single day for 3 months. You betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way. You made a fool of me in my own neighborhood, waving at your lover while I mowed the lawn. And worse, you brought this close to our daughters. You'd say you were going for a walk and you were meeting him. No therapist in the world can fix this. So that's it? 10 years and you give up without even trying?" Kyle looked at her, really looked. Same green eyes, same hair, but she was a stranger. "I didn't give up, Jenna. You gave up the first time you got into that car. Every time you lied about where you were, you chose. Every time you walked out that door, you chose him over me, over the girls, over everything we built." The days that followed were a haze of lawyers, paperwork, and hard conversations. Kyle and Jenna kept up a fragile front in front of the girls, but the tension was palpable. Kyle moved into the guest room. It was Kyle who told the girls, on a Saturday morning. He sat with them in the living room while Jenna watched silently from the opposite sofa. He used simple words. Sometimes adults who love each other find out they can't live together anymore. But Mom and Dad love you very much, and that will never change. Emma cried. "Is it my fault?" Kyle felt his heart break. "No, sweetheart. This has nothing to do with you. This is between adults, about adult choices." Lily asked if she'd still have her room and toys. Kyle assured her she would, that she'd have 2 rooms now. He answered their questions honestly without destroying their image of their mother. Even with the pain, he knew they needed both parents. What he didn't tell Jenna was his additional plan. He knew Brett didn't deserve to walk away unscathed. He talked to nearby neighbors, the ones who valued honesty and family. He didn't spread gossip. He just told the truth when people asked why there was a moving truck. She had an affair with Brett, he simply told Mrs. Martinez. "I found out. We're divorcing." The news spread naturally. In small communities, secrets don't last. Within 2 weeks, Brett went from invisible to a pariah. People stopped greeting him. Invitations stopped coming. Mrs. Thompson, from the house next to his, openly turned her back. Kyle didn't have to do anything but be honest. The community did the rest. The divorce was surprisingly fast. Jenna didn't contest anything. She accepted shared custody with Kyle having primary. She accepted leaving the house. She accepted the asset split that favored him. She seemed exhausted, defeated, realizing too late the magnitude of what she'd lost. Brett, Kyle heard through whispers, cut all contact with Jenna after the scandal. Exactly the coward he'd suspected. He wanted the thrill of seducing his neighbor's wife but ran from the consequences. Jenna tried calling, sent messages that went ignored. He'd used her and discarded her. 3 months after the separation was final, Brett put his house up for sale. The sign appeared one morning. Kyle saw it from his window while making coffee. Brett moved out 2 weeks later. Kyle watched the truck get loaded, watched Brett take one last look at his house before leaving. He didn't feel satisfaction, just cold justice. His life had changed irrevocably, but he was determined to rebuild. The transformation wasn't immediate. There were hard nights, especially the first few weeks alone in that house. The silence seemed to scream. Every corner held memories that hurt. Moments when loneliness weighed heavy, when he questioned every decision in the marriage, searching for signs he should have seen. Therapy helped. He started seeing a psychologist twice a week, working through the betrayal, the anger, the grief for the life he'd imagined. But he had his daughters. They were his anchor and his purpose. He had his integrity intact, and that meant more than he'd realized. He had support from friends and family who admired how he'd handled everything with dignity. He returned to things he'd let go. He started running again, waking up early for 5 miles that cleared his mind. He picked up old hobbies, started playing the guitar again that had been gathering dust in the closet. He invested time in friendships that had faded, reconnecting with his brother who lived in another state. 9 months after the separation, Kyle was in a different place. Not fully healed, but healing. It was a spring afternoon at the school gym for the year-end party. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating colorful decorations. Kyle was chatting with other parents about a summer project, laughing at something someone said, when he saw Jenna walk in. She looked different in ways that went beyond the obvious. Thinner, but not healthily. Like someone who'd forgotten to eat. Her hair lacked shine, tied up simply. There was a dullness in her eyes that had once been bright. Dark circles underneath suggested sleepless nights. She wore jeans and a basic top, so different from the woman who'd always taken pride in her appearance. Jenna saw him and hesitated at the entrance, unsure whether to approach. Emma spotted her and ran. Jenna knelt to hug her, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes, more sadness than joy. Kyle watched from afar, not with burning anger, not with sharp pain. Just distant melancholy for what might have been. He learned, through casual comments from the girls over dinner, that Jenna lived in a small apartment on the other side of town. Her social circle had shrunk after the split. She always seemed tired when picking them up for weekends. Emma mentioned once that Mom cried sometimes when she thought no one was watching. Kyle didn't know how to feel, swinging between residual compassion and the memory that she'd chosen this path. Jenna looked in his direction across the crowded room. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Kyle saw regret there, clear as water. Deep sadness and late understanding of what she'd destroyed. She looked like she wanted to say something, lips parting, but closed them. Kyle gave a slight, polite nod and turned back to his conversation. There was nothing left to say. No reconciliation possible or desired. Just two strangers who'd once been married, connected only by their 2 girls. When the party ended, Kyle took the girls' hands and walked out. Emma talked about the science project that got an honorable mention. Lily jumped beside him, singing a song from class. The sun was warm, the sky clear, and as they chattered in the back seat, Kyle drove home with a peace he hadn't felt in a long time. Life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, hard days when the girls asked why their family couldn't go back to the way it was. But he'd survived the storm. Protected his daughters, created stable routines and a loving environment. Kept his dignity when it would have been easier to sink into bitterness. Reclaimed his life from someone who hadn't valued it. And that, Kyle realized as he parked in front of his truly own house, the yard needing mowing, the life he was rebuilding brick by brick, was more than enough. It was a new beginning. Silent justice. It was him moving forward with his head up, eyes on the horizon, knowing he'd never again let someone make him feel invisible. He'd lost a wife, but found himself. And his daughters, laughing and running toward the house, still had a father who would always be there, strong, present, building for them a foundation of love, honesty, and dignity that no betrayal could ever destroy. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.